Tropical storm Humberto has formed, and the disturbance in the northwest Caribbean is likely to develop as well. How both will impact our area. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather, and it's nice to see you on this Wednesday. I hope you're doing well. So much to get into in this video with the newly developed tropical storm Humberto, Invest 94L causing some problems in our northeast areas. So what do you say we get started? Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida. They are hometown homeowners insurance attorneys offering free consultation and policy reviews to get wind, hail, hurricane damage. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Go to leanomelaw.com if you would like more information. Now, friends, this is going to be a very complex forecast. I'm going to try and simplify it as much as I possibly can. I'm going to use my experience. I was a television meteorologist for 25 years, born and raised in Florida. Tropical weather is my jam. I'm going to use that experience to talk about these storms, how they're going to evolve, how they could likely interact with each other, and ultimately, what are going to be the potential impacts to our area. So we're going to get started. You might think I'm going to start with Tropical Storm Humberto, but I'm actually going to begin with Invest 94L because this is the disturbance that's actually impacting our area and bringing some problems to portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands for today. So 94L is still a broad, disorganized system, and it really hasn't gotten too much more organized today, although there's been a healthy blow up of some thunderstorms on the southern side. But this is an elongated area of low pressure, and it's not really moving very quickly. So we have seen waves of rain and storms over places like the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, the northern side of the Leeward Islands, and the Dominican Republic today. The numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour. So we've had squally weather, we've had sheets of rain coming in, we've had locally heavy downpours. Vieques has had a flood advisory. We've had additional flooding areas across portions of the islands that I've just mentioned. And again, we've had some wind gusts that have hit 35, even 40 miles an hour. And this rain is not going anywhere anytime soon. I can show you guys the live radar out of Puerto Rico and watch this thing just light up right now, especially on the eastern side of the island. I mentioned that, and hopefully it will light up here. Let's do this on the eastern side of the island. There we go. Look at that live radar come on. So Fajardo, Vieques, Culebra, Humacao, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, very wet, squally conditions sitting over the area. And you can see the hefty amount of rain south of the island. So we're going to continue with a flood potential in these areas. Easily 2 to 4 inches of rain could fall in some of these spots during the day. Additional heavy rain is likely for Thursday as well, as again, Invest 94L is not going to be moving very quickly. And even if it does try and move a little bit, it's such a broad disturbance that there's going to be a lot of tropical moisture over these areas. Still some heftier rain over the northern side of the Leeward Islands as well. It hasn't been as persistent today, but especially up towards Anguilla and St. Bart's and St. Martin and Statia, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis. We've had some passing showers and some locally heavy downpours as well, even a few thunderstorms from time to time. Now again, ultimately 94L will track slowly to the north and to the west. When I show you guys the visible satellite imagery here, again, you're going to see a broad disturbance. I'm going to pause this because again, we're losing the daylight, but there's certainly an opportunity that the low-level center could consolidate farther south than when the hurricane center is kind of putting it right now. And where the low-level center consolidates and forms is going to have a significant impact on the track and the impacts to our area in the coming days. I'm going to talk a lot more about that coming up, but right now it's a big rainmaker for these areas. Have a live camera to show you guys. This is from our friends at the Soggy Dollar Bar, Joost Van Dyke in the British Virgin Islands. It has been a fairly overcast, breezy day. They've had waves of rain coming in. Again, some locally heavy rain. It's not an all-day situation in the Virgin Islands, but from time to time, we've had some heftier showers coming through, and that should continue late today, this evening, overnight, and through most of Thursday. Now, yesterday, as this disturbance was moving through, we had heavier rain in other portions of the Leeward Islands. This is from the Elmshaw area of Dominica. JS sent this to me. Look at that sheet of rain coming in, being driven by 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts, waves of heavy tropical downpours coming through Dominica. Again, this is going to cause some localized flooding, some urban areas, some of those low-lying areas, flood very quickly with that kind of rainfall. Appreciate JS sending in that video from the Dominica area. Again, it's a little bit improved in most of the Lesser Antilles today as Invest 94L is trying to pull away, but down the road here, we're going to get more rain, especially into the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and ultimately into Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas and the eastern sides of Cuba. I'm going to have a lot more on that coming up in just one second. But now I want to talk about what's happening currently with now Tropical Storm Humberto. So I'm going to drop off this formation area because it's developed. We have the first advisory from Humberto. It's just gotten more organized over the last 24 hours. Hurricane Center thinks we now have a consolidated low-level center. There is still not a lot of convection on the western side. All these significant winds and the significant heavy rainfall and lightning on the northeast side of the storm. But the first advisory looks like this. Winds are 40 miles an hour, pressures 1,008 millibars, moving west-northwest at 15, and about 550 miles from the east-northeast side of the Leeward Islands. This is not going to have direct impacts to the Caribbean, but we can cross off the 8th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, and down the road in the coming days, 94L could ultimately become Imelda. So we can have Humberto and Imelda as we go into the weekend. Now, the first track from the National Hurricane Center on Humberto does have it becoming a hurricane as we move into the weekend. They clearly talk about in their first discussion how there is a lot of uncertainty with the ultimate strength and especially the track from Humberto. So this is a first glance, but when I show you guys the models, there are some forecasts that take it closer to the eastern coast of the United States, and there are some that recurve it east of Bermuda, and ultimately the potential for 94L and Humberto to begin to interact with each other in the western Atlantic basin as well. By the way, if I didn't mention it, the numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour, so we've had some significant wind today as well. All right, so let me now talk about the potential tracks of these storms, how they could interact, and then we're going to look at the models. So again, I'm going to drop off just a little bit of this information for you guys, just going to be a little bit easier for you guys to see. I'm also going to take this and zoom it out just a little bit. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to bring up the telestrator feature here, and I'm going to talk about the two kind of more likely scenarios out of 94L. The first is that the low-level center consolidates closer to Puerto Rico, which ultimately will more than likely drive 94L just on the northern side of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, the northern side of Hispaniola, into Turks and Caicos and the eastern side of the Bahamas as we get into the weekend. Because the center is not going to have as much interaction with the Dominican Republic and Haiti over the island of Hispaniola, very mountainous, can rip apart storms. This would be the scenario where 94L could develop a little bit quicker and be a little bit farther off towards the east. The second scenario is that the low-level center ultimately forms farther off to the south and kind of slowly meanders over Hispaniola directly and then pulls its way into the southern side of the Bahamas later in the weekend. A slower path and one that has a weaker storm. Now, ultimately, this could still become Imelda even with this scenario, but it's a slower, farther west path. And how that plays in is how it would interact with Humberto, okay? A farther east track, closer to Humberto, potentially more interaction. Now, you are looking at, right, more than likely a much weaker Imelda compared to what actually could be a major hurricane south and west of Bermuda and east of the Bahamas. Typically in those scenarios, when we have an interaction, we call it the Fujiwara effect. It's not a true dance of the storms because if they're going to begin to kind of spin around each other in elliptical form, typically they're close to each other's strength. But if it's a weak tropical storm and a major hurricane, more than likely what's going to happen is Humberto is going to try and tug on Imelda and kind of almost pull it in or close or have it come along for the ride, if you will. So when I show you guys the models, we'll kind of break that down. But there is the opportunity that over the weekend and early next week that these two storms, depending on their proximity to each other, could begin to have some interaction and some impacts to each other. But with Humberto likely to becoming a lot stronger, it's going to be the boss. It's going to say, you're coming along with me, or it's even going to try and rip apart the northeast side of the weaker Imelda. So let's look at the models, guys. Again, I'm going to drop off just a little bit of this data, get a little bit easier for you guys to see. I've got all of the models to look at. We're going to begin with the GFS. Now, the GFS yesterday had Humberto becoming very strong and had basically 94L not developing. It is the same scenario for today. I'm still drawing. No, I don't want to do that. All right, let's finish. This is one reason why I don't use the telestrator much on this. And then let's clear, right? Please tell me now we're not drawing. Okay, good. So this is your deterministic run of the GFS model. Clearly developing Humberto into a powerful hurricane. This would not be a great track for Bermuda, all right? Again, we don't want to put a lot of emphasis in any of these models yet. This is a very complex forecast. The potential interaction of these two storms, a cold front coming off of the United States East Coast, and then a cutoff low in the northeast of the United States that could ultimately impact these storms as well. But what we're hoping for is that we get these storms to be pushed east of the United States East Coast and either west of Bermuda or even recurving before Bermuda. But obviously, Bermuda has to keep a very close eye on the ultimate track of Humberto, but this cold front should hopefully push the storms off of the coast. Now, there are some scenarios where that is not the case. And again, I'm not going to be talking about anything definitive at this point in time, but you can clearly see a very sloppy 94L on the GFS that doesn't fully form and ultimately gets wrapped into Humberto as it pulls off to the north and to the east. Let me show you guys what it looks like with the surface winds out of the GFS model. So same model, gonna loop this up. I'm gonna grab my drink a little bit early today. It's a major hurricane just west of Bermuda as we get about a week's time from now. You can see the broad 94L disturbance here, but nothing ultimately tries to wrap up. And as it gets a little bit better formed east of Grand Bahama, it gets snagged into Humberto. So this is one where we never get the fully formed system over portions of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, and we get a really powerful Humberto. Now, this could still bring a lot of rain to the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, even if it's a sloppy system over the weekend. Let me show you the European deterministic model, okay? So we're gonna loop this up a couple of times and talk about it. I got a nice slow loop for you. There's Humberto beginning to develop as we get into Friday, right? You're going to slowly see over the weekend Imelda beginning to form over the Bahamas. So here we go. The storms become close enough to each other where they start to get pulled. But look what the European model does. The European model puts the brakes on Imelda, and that upper level low that I've mentioned creates a weakness, and it pulls the storm back towards the United States East Coast. Look at this scenario again. Here comes Humberto, right? The developing Imelda. The cold front comes in, pushes the storms initially off the United States East Coast. Humberto gets pulled away, but Imelda stops and gets back into the Carolinas. Now, this is the first time that I've seen any of the global models break out this scenario, but it's an evolving pattern off the in the eastern side of the United States, and one that I can't ultimately fully discount. Is it a plausible scenario? It is, because if they both don't get caught up in that cold front and get pulled north into the east, they could stall out, and that weakness develops in the east coast of the United States with that upper level cutoff low, and they could get shoved back, or at least one of them, to the eastern side of the United States. So that's what the European model is showing, but it does have two fully developed storms, unlike the GFS. This is the AI version of the European model. Again, a developing Humberto over the next couple of days. We do have Imelda beginning to form, and then both of them get caught up in that trough and get pulled north into the east. It would not be a great scenario for Bermuda, but it would be less impacts to the United States East Coast with a fairly sloppy system, but still some impacts possible, especially for the northern and the northwest Bahamas. But Imelda doesn't really get fully formed until it gets back into the open waters of the Atlantic across the Gulf Stream there. So that's the European AI and deterministic models. This is the German icon model, okay? Just to show you another scenario. Again, slow, nice loop for us here. Here's Humberto, slowly developing, slowing down, becoming stronger. Here you get Imelda. Now, with this scenario, there's more interaction between the two storms over the weekend, okay? And that actually puts the brakes on Imelda over the Bahamas. So now you have a storm that's strengthening in the exceptionally warm waters of the Bahamas over the weekend, but not moving. It's the Icon model that has the most direct impacts for the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, with a stronger storm that actually gets pulled south and east as the counterclockwise winds of Humberto kind of tug on it and shove it off towards the east. So with the Icon, we do see more interaction, and it's not a great scenario for Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and because you get powerful Humberto near Bermuda, and then you get an even stronger storm relative to what the other models are showing with Imelda over the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. But the potential interaction with the two storms, my friends, is really a big wrench when it comes into having more clarity down the road with the forecast. I think we're going to see a lot of run-to-run inconsistency with these models, especially until we get a better idea of what 94L is going to ultimately do. This is a snapshot of the half-speed model for Monday morning. It has powerful major hurricane Humberto just south and west of Bermuda. Again, not a good scenario there, but well away from the United States East Coast. And it has a very weak 94L over the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. Not much development. Locally heavy rains, just like we're seeing in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands right now, but ultimately not a truly developed system. When we look at the HWRF model, Sunday evening, you have another major hurricane much farther south, so slower movement with Humberto on the HWRF, but you also have a much stronger tropical storm, Imelda, just on the eastern side of the Bahamas by Sunday evening. So you can clearly see how widespread we are with all the models, the tropical models, the global models that I've shown you with both storms. This would have much more of an interaction, right? Because you have a little bit stronger Imelda and you have that Cat 3 Humberto, and they're close enough where we would see some interaction with those storms late in the weekend and early into the week. So let me show you the GFS tracks from Humberto. These are your ensemble members. Again, all of them have it off of the United States East Coast. Bermuda would have to keep a very close eye on. This would be a very close track to a la Gabrielle. The European model, about the same. There are a couple of Western outliers that slow it down, right, and keep it off of the Carolina coastline, the Delmarva Peninsula coastline, and just other areas of the Northeast United States. But the majority of the ensemble members of the Euro have it accelerating to the north and to the east. The intensity from Humberto looks like this. Stronger, 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 likely to become a Cat 2, if not even a Cat 3, all right? And we'll just see slow progression, might, just kind of steadily develop with a little bit of that wind shear in the coming days, and then get quickly stronger over the weekend. This is the tracks of Invest 94L. It's kind of like spaghetti. That's why they're called spaghetti plots. They're all over the place. Until we have a true low-level center of circulation, until we know where that's defined, you're going to see a lot of inconsistency in these models. The general northwest track is likely, but again, how much does it interact with Hispaniola? Does that really keep it very broad and weak until the weekend, where it might slowly develop over the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, or can it rapidly strengthen? Now, I don't expect this to develop anywhere near as quick as what Humberto did, and that means likely it's going to be a much weaker storm with its closest approach to Humberto. So we're going to have a stronger Humberto, we're going to have a weaker 94L/Imelda. European model tracks, again, not all of them even develop this system, but those that do are a little bit farther north, which means they're a little bit farther east with a little bit more interaction with Humberto, but ultimately some of the European tracks do drive it into the United States East Coast. So that's something to monitor for you guys as well. And when we look at the intensity, there's not many of the tropical models that don't develop 94L into Imelda. So likely we are to get a tropical storm, and a couple of the outliers have it becoming a hurricane. So friends, there is still a lot of uncertainty with the development and the tracks of both of these storms. Interests in these areas should continue to monitor the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, the United States East Coast, and Bermuda. And especially for these areas like the DR at Haiti, Turks and Caicos, and Bahamas, for, if nothing else, some locally heavy rainfall and gusty winds and very rough surf and sea conditions and poor boating conditions. But obviously, stronger development of 94L and Humberto could cause additional problems to these spots. Friends, at the halftime of this video, thanks for taking a quick second. If you got anything out of this, All I ask is a simple hit that like button for me. I do appreciate that. Helps the channel out more than you think. Thanks for subscribing. If you want these tropical updates and your daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, you found your home. Thank you for sharing this with your family and friends. Our memberships are open, 2 tiers, including our Team MM, where you get access to exclusive member shorts. Now, I posted one public today, but that's kind of a preview of that. For your Team MM member, you get some exclusive kind of behind the scenes thoughts that I have regarding some of these tropical systems and just our daily forecasts across the area. So now we are going to get into our daily forecast, which means I'm going to take my second sip of my diet green tea. And again, I appreciate all your support. If you have any questions out of what I've already just talked about, drop it in the comments section below. Let me know. But I hope that the slow step-by-step discussion of both storms give you guys an idea of what I'm going to be watching in the coming days. There's not a lot of clarity yet. We know we have Humberto, right? But how does 94L ultimately develop, and how does that interact? And the tracks are really, really still uncertain. Now, again, we're clearing out a little bit through most of the Lesser Antilles. We've had some passing showers today, Martinique, St. Lucia, towards Barbados and St. Vincent and portions of the Grenadines. But again, the axis of thickest tropical moisture with 94L is farther up to the north and to the west. Speaking of that, we have numerous areas of flood warnings for portions of the Dominican Republic. Locally heavy rainfall is already breaking out. Additional very heavy rain is likely in many locations. We're talking about 2 to 4+ inches of rain, 50 to 100 millimeters, and that's just today, with additional widespread heavy rain to come. Showers and storms are scattered through most of the Bahamas today. We've had a little bit more concentration of storms again in the northwest Bahamas, from Grand Bahama to the Abacos, Eleuthera, Nassau, New Providence, and Andros. A little bit of spotty rain down towards Cat Island and Exuma and Long Island, places like that. I'm going to bring back on these winds. You're going to see the temperatures pop on first, but you'll see the winds come back on. Let's see if we've had any stronger wind gusts here. Nothing in any of the reporting sites, but I could expect to see some 25 to 30 mile an hour winds with some of that activity. Thunderstorms are again very prolific over Cuba, and again, the eastern sides of Cuba need to also keep an eye out for 94L. We've had some thunderstorms again develop today over portions of Jamaica, especially in interior locations and some of the western areas, but some of the mountainous or hillier, interior locations like the Mandeville area. Hopefully Mandeville has had some thunderstorm activity today. Santa Cruz, maybe just to the west of Maypen. It's been a quiet day for my friends in the Cayman Islands. Look, I know it's been hot, guys. We've got some 33, 34 degree plus Celsius daytime highs for today. A few thunderstorms are developing here in portions of Quintana Roo, and we've had a couple of passing showers over Belize for today as well, but just not as active of a pattern overall. Again, our axis of tropical moisture, the deepest, has moved off towards the west, so it's a little bit drier atmosphere right now, but I'll be monitoring this situation. Still going to see some locally heavy downpours through the southern sides of Honduras and Nicaragua, especially over Panama and Costa Rica, where there are some flood concerns right now. There are some areas under flash flood warnings, and it's been another lovely day for my friends in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. Look at Oranjestad with a 35 mile an hour wind gust a little bit earlier in the day. This should have been a live look to Corinth, St. Lucia. This camera was working about a half hour ago. I'll give it a half second, but it might be down for the present time. If not, we'll move on. We got plenty of our live cameras here at Meteo Mundo. Live shot to central Eleuthera and Governor's Harbor. Again, a couple of showers and a few isolated storms in the distance, but at this point in time, we're looking pretty good there. And there is that very gusty wind across the Oranjestad area and Eagle Beach. Another lovely day, another hot, another dry afternoon. Again, if you live in Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, 33, 34 degrees Celsius, daytime highs over the next couple days, not out of the question. I want to talk about the rainfall. This is going to be your accumulated rainfall graphic from the GFS model. We'll look at the European model coming up in a second as well. Again, this is significant rainfall in the coming days in some of these spots. So we can actually kind of query these numbers, and I'm just going to put on a couple of areas. Again, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where this heaviest rain is going to fall, but you get the idea that along the path of the broad 94L 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, certainly not out of the question. And again, all this takes us is 5 days down the road, so it kind of takes us into the southeast side of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, but there will be more rain with 94L/Imelda to come for my friends in the Bahamas ultimately. And again, some of this rain will extend farther west because it's such a broad system, so the eastern sides of Cuba. Again, you're just seeing a broad brush, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, 150 millimeters. Still could see some locally heavy rain over portions of the northern side of the Lesser Antilles, Guadeloupe and Antigua, Barbuda and Montserrat, even up towards Anguilla. You know, I'm still expecting a little bit more rain than what the GFS is showing over portions of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, but easily you can check off an inch of rain, no doubt about it, in most spots, but several inches are not out of the question. In Humberto, along that path, we're likely to get more than a foot of rain, right? As a matter of fact, I believe the European model in a 7-day time frame has some spots over 2 feet of rain over portions of the track from Humberto. All right, let's take a look again real quick at the next couple of days. I have your island by island rainfall forecast for you guys as well. So even if you guys aren't going to be directly impacted by Humberto, stick around because I do have your island by island forecast. I'm just resetting the model here after getting into all that tropical data so you guys can see. So obviously it's a wet, sloppy forecast. That's not going to change. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and especially down the road, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Turks and Caicos, central, southeast Bahamas, eastern Cuba. Can't even rule out kind of some of this moisture spinning towards Jamaica. Look, it's not going to be as widespread and as locally heavy as areas north and east, but my friends in Kingston, Portmore, Spanish Town, Montego Bay, Negril, you could actually get a little bit of that tropical moisture coming in. It will actually probably be beneficial because you're certainly not going to get the brunt of the storm, but some of that moisture could stream that far west. And again, ultimately down the road, it just gets wetter and stormier in portions of the Bahamas. We are going to be drying out overall through most of the Lesser Antilles. Still could see some spotty showers moving back in. There's still more tropical moisture coming back in, but just not in an organized fashion here. Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, the ABC Islands could see a few scattered showers. We're going to dry out a little bit in the western areas for the short term, but you can see that there is an axis of moisture kind of getting pulled into 94L that again, kind of even outside of that could push to the west. And down the road, I could see our western areas getting wetter again at the weekend. So let me break this down for you guys island by island. Again, in the short term, not a ton of rain northwest, central, and southeast Bahamas, but obviously building, especially Saturday, southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, rain chances really going up. Exceptionally high in Cuba, especially on the eastern side of the island. Scattered to isolated rain for the Cayman Islands, Belize, Cancun, and Cozumel in the coming days. Jamaica's rain chances still more scattered or isolated over the next couple of days, more widespread on Saturday. Extremely high rain chances the next 36 to 48 hours. Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, locally heavy rain. Flash flooding is not out of the question, especially in the mountainous island of Hispaniola, down into some of that lower terrain. The water can really accumulate quick. Please be very cautious. Make sure you check in with local government and officials. Still a high likelihood of some showers and storms on Saturday. U.S. and British Virgin Islands, wet, squally weather, wind gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour from time to time. 50% chance Friday and Saturday. Still dry in Bermuda in the coming days, but obviously Humberto and Imelda might have other plans early next week. Anguilla's rain chances are going to be moderate. Same thing for St. Kitts and Nevis. You're going to see that in the Leeward Islands for the next couple of days. Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, Guadeloupe. Despite the fact 94L is pulling away, it is a broad disturbance and still some tropical moisture over your head will produce some locally heavy showers and storms. No flood advisories at this point in time, but again, check in with your local government and officials. Scattered showers and storms south, Dominica, Martinique, but ultimately drying out a bit in these areas, especially as we get into Saturday. More isolated to scattered variety, Barbados, Grenada, TNT. Scattered rain for Suriname and Guyana. 30% chance for rain in the next couple of days in Nueva Esparta. And not a lot of rain, but a slightly better chance in the ABC Islands on Saturday. Now, obviously, surf and sea conditions are going to be a big part of Humberto in 94L. Area dependent, but this is going to bring long period swells over a lot of the western Atlantic basin, from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands to the northern sides of Hispaniola, Turks and Caicos, especially the exposed waters on the eastern side of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, and all of the United States East Coast. Friends, you should expect there to be significant wind impacts nearer this storm, but also surf and sea impacts as we get closer there. There's going to be some beach issues. There's going to be some locally heavy, rainfall with some higher tides in some of the Bahamas as well. So, the wave heights are going to be significant here and pushing a lot of water to some of the United States East Coast to elevate some of the tidal situations there. The details are still in the weeds, but you can clearly see that the GFS model just blows up wave heights that are in the double digits nearer this storm, a la Gabrielle, that could push a lot of water closer to the United States East Coast. Not only that, but just the localized rain. Again, if we look at the European model, remember it slowly develops Imelda over the Bahamas. So that slow track ultimately puts 4, 6, 8+ inches of rain over portions of the Bahamas, maybe even Turks and Caicos as well, including Grand Turk. And then obviously Humberto's track has some significant rainfall to go along with that as well. Heavy rainfall for Panama, Costa Rica, and look at all of the rain. Again, eastern Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, a lot of darker reds there, guys. 4+ inches of rain, 100 millimeters plus in many of those locations. Well, we got ourselves some things to talk about here, friends, the rest of the week, and you can follow us across all social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video to help tell the weather story in your area, it is myMediaMundo@gmail.com. Again, you have a question about the forecast, drop it in the comments section below. Also, look out for our radar live stream. Right? I could initiate that at any time. That is a kind of continuous stream of our live cameras, our live radar, maybe even a video update from me that can be on this Meteo Mundo channel. And if there is any direct impacts, just like I did last year for you guys, I'll go on live and cover them for you. We got you covered here at Meteo Mundo. Thanks again for liking and subscribing. Have a great rest of your day. I'm back tomorrow. Please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. Storm season's here. Get storm damage of any kind. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process, and they offer free consultation and policy reviews. It's leanomnilaw.com for more information. I'm back tomorrow. I'll see you then right here at Meteo Mundo.